win! You started this war, Helen!
Now feel the surge!
There's something deeply frustrating about swinging open your fridge door and finding everything inside turning to room temperature mush because the power's out. And in that same instant, spotting your neighbor on her porch, dressed in her usual yoga gear and pearls, clutching a clipboard like a shield, staring at you with a smug grin as if she'd just demolished your kid's sandcastle and was daring you to complain. Her name was Helen, the kind of woman who includes her HOA president title in every email signature and views a few decorative rocks in your yard as a capital crime. But this wasn't just an annoyance. This was a declaration of war. Because Helen didn't merely flip a switch. She hired a landscaper to dig up the dirt behind my cabin and sever the underground power line, all under the guise of it not meeting community standards. She knew I worked from home, knew I had a permit, knew I'd catch her red-handed. But she also knew I wouldn't yell or throw a fit. No, I'd handle it my way quietly, methodically, and with a jolt she'd never forget. My off-grid cabin perched just beyond the HOA's reach, grandfathered in long before Helen and her flock of cookie-cutter conformists moved in and started enforcing their rules. I had my solar panels, rainwater collection, composting setup, that the whole self-sufficient setup. But last winter, a brutal storm shattered a couple of my panels, so I shelled out to hook up temporarily to the neighborhood grid through a shared easement. It was all legal, approved by the town, signed off by the old HOA board, and documented down to the last detail. Helen, though, had her own vision. As the newly self-appointed HOA president after the previous one fled to Arizona in what I now figure was a smart escape, she set out to beautify the subdivision. And apparently, a guy in a cedar-shingled cabin with a goat named Biscuit and an eco-friendly toilet was the eyesore she couldn't abide. She started with fines, dozens of them, all bogus. Then came the threatening letters demanding I dismantle non-compliant structures on my own land. She even brought in a surveyor who awkwardly confirmed that my property didn't overlap HOA territory by even an inch. Frustrated, she escalated to digging up my power line like it was an unwanted dandelion. I spotted the worker in his bright vest, standing over the trench with bolt cutters and a crumpled map, muttering about orders from MS. Helen. I just nodded, thanked him for the heads up, and headed back inside without a word. First, I rigged up a hefty battery bank charged from my remaining solar setup, enough to run essentials like a small radio station. Next, I borrowed a beast of a diesel generator from my Uncle Joy, a 1970s farm relic built like a tank and probably outlawed in half the states for its raw power. Then, I pored over my permit docs and spotted a gem. The transformer box feeding both my line and Helen's house was city-owned, with dual access points, and I had rights to one side. With some clever rewiring through my barn's conduit, I could reverse the flow. But I didn't rush it. Impulse isn't my style. I bided my time until Helen's annual summer block party, Serenity Soiree, with a fancy tent, a harp player, and a strict no pets policy that turned Biscuit into public enemy number one. She hand-delivered invitations door to door, and when she reached my porch with her plastered-on smile, I accepted mine politely and shut the door. The evening of the party, I let things warm up. By 7:45, wine was pouring, the harp was strumming, and fairy lights twinkled like a magazine spread. That's when I threw the switch. It began subtly a flicker, a bulb bursting in Helen's kitchen window. Then came the surge. The LEDs blazed white-hot before fizzling out like scared lightning bugs. Guests murmured in confusion. Inside, a smoke detector chirped, and her AC unit gagged like it was choking on exhaust before sputtering silent. From my porch, lemonade in hand, I feigned reading a book while peering through hidden binoculars. In under a minute, her whole house groaned under the unregulated blast from a generator meant for heavy farm equipment, not delicate smart appliances. She dashed inside, shrieking loud enough to hear through shut windows. Lights strobed, fans clattered, something upstairs sparked wildly. Guests scattered as if the place might blow. And just as the harpist strummed a calming chord, the amp exploded with a bang that had everyone fleeing like free audits were announced. It was a masterpiece, controlled, exact, and utterly deniable. When firefighters arrived after the alarm looped into frenzy, they found fried circuits, a melted thermostat, and a hissing fridge, but no obvious tampering. Since the junction was city property, it got chalked up as a utility glitch. Helen wasn't fooled. The next morning, she stormed my porch like an over-caffeinated security guard, accusing me of cyber-sabotaging her home. I blinked innocently, pointed to Biscuit munching her prized azaleas, and offered her some off-grid lemonade. She flushed beet red and stomped off, babbling about lawyers. But that was merely the opener. Mess with my home, my power, and my goat's peace, and you don't get a quick prank, you get the full strategy, with suspense baked in to keep you guessing if it's done or just starting. Helen spent that morning parading the cul-de-sac in her support socks, dialing emergency electricians, berating utility folks on speaker, and hilariously trying to file a domestic sabotage report on the HOA site. I knew because I'd set up a long-range Wi-Fi antenna ages ago and could peek at the logs, not hacking, just observing like a fan with snacks. By Tuesday, her repairs tallied $12,400, scorched AC, fried subpanel, a smart system that randomly locked her bedroom door. An IT expert, per neighborhood chatter from Linda across the street, called the power spike the weirdest anomaly he'd seen. Me? I switched back to full off-grid, sipping tea under my panels, using my compost toilet, living in serene, unplugged harmony. But Helen ramped up. She called an emergency HOA meeting in her garage, shouting the agenda from her driveway while folks pretended to garden. I happened to be pruning my herbs for a front-row view. She ranted about my military-grade gear and accused me of hoarding power like a survivalist. She waved a charred surge protector as proof. Neighbors looked puzzled. Brave Mike from Lot 12 piped up, "Didn't you cut his power first?" She blanked him out. That's when I knew victory was near, when control freaks like her lose the plot. They just amplify the noise. That night, I slipped to her property line under cover of dark, not to wreck anything, but to plant a gift, a plastic flamingo in shades, sign reading, "Warning, power may surge anytime." I lit it with a solar spotlight in her flower bed. Come morning, she was out in her robe, hacking at it with a hoe like a fury unleashed. Biscuit eyed her from my porch with pure disdain. By week's end, she lodged a city complaint claiming I ran a terrorism-capable power op. Inspector Bob, a barbecue-scented vet in his 50s who'd checked my place before, arrived smirking, toured everything, and quipped, "Still legal and dull. Want me to tell her, or we both call it a day?" I said I'd manage, and did via a handwritten letter to the HOA board, landing in her lap. I praised their electrical resilience focus and offered my new secondary transformer for emergency backups via formal application. Predictably, Helen, eyeing my industrial setup, bit. 2 days later, her letter arrived on fancy stationery, requesting access and tossing in a $100 utility fund donation. I chuckled till Biscuit bolted. I agreed with conditions. I toured her around my diesel monster, demoed manual switches, handed a tiny print procedure laminate with a user error liability clause. She nodded like an expert, but she was clueless. That afternoon, she rallied another meeting, proclaiming she'd secured backup infrastructure and would lead a readiness drive. Uninvited, I watched as she botched her own wiring, hiring the same digger guy to link her panel to an old RV outlet, exposed wires, no fuses, a fire waiting to happen. I considered letting Darwin win, but nah. I slipped a second card in her mailbox. Generator not for amateur installs. See fire code 904.12.1. She summoned a pro 2 days later, who tagged her box in red tape. I snapped a photo. Even? Hardly. The real revenge wasn't the surge or the goat's hedge feasts. It was the unseen strike, a call to the IRS. I wasn't aiming for jail time initially, just a shake-up. But tipping them off about the HOA's cash-only events and unreported donations snowballed fast. I submitted scans of flyers Helen distributed, "Donation please," her Facebook boasts of fundraising hauls. The HOA wasn't a nonprofit, unlicensed for collections, skipping tax forms. Yet they'd raked in nearly $18,000 in improvement fees, funneled to a PayPal under Helen's name. I figured a letter would rattle her during dinner with her boxed wine. Meanwhile, she terrorized repair crews with crayon sketches. I went ghost back trail errands, blackout curtains, even muffled Biscuit's bell. Without a foe, she turned inward. It began with accusing Susan, the treasurer, of budget sabotage. Susan demanded the books. Helen stonewalled. For board members quit. Leaked chats called for her ouster, even dredging her old Yelp rant about a funeral home's parking near her SUV. Then the IRS letter hit. I didn't witness the opening, but saw her freeze on her porch, envelope in hand, like it had scorched her potluck dish. She vanished indoors. Rumors flew audits, lawsuits, late-night shredding. I stayed mum, tending my garden, but my masterstroke brewed. Contacting Frank, the original developer who still owned the HOA's common lands, trails, and that crucial utility shed with the grid's main fuse. Frank, living counties away and calling Helen that mailbox-suing nightmare, sold me the plot for cash above asking. I didn't want the shed just its control. Legally mine, I erected a carved sign, private property. Trespassers will be shocked. Below, generator-controlled fuse system, owned by me. No name needed. She knew. Morning found her screeching at it in workout clothes. Cops came, saw my deed, advised her to back off. Her petition flopped 3 signatures, one mistaken for garden club. She faked calm with a restoration picnic, smiling through twitching eyes over deviled eggs. That's when I sealed it, filing to convert the land to a city conservation easement. The shed would go, the area, a protected wetland, stripping HOA build rights forever. City notices went up yellow on the fence. Helen spotted it at dawn, her empire shrunk. That night, she confronted me on my porch, hands shaking, venom in her eyes. I know it was you, she hissed. Me? I sipped tea. I just live here. She clenched fists, spun, and left broken, aware she'd waged war on someone who won without volume. Helen clung, filing appeals. I overheard her at the zoning office while renewing my tank permit. Urgent injunction against a rogue neighbor's loophole exploitation. I turned. Morning, Helen. Nice vocab. She stiffened. The clerk, knowing her rep, made her wait. My form's done. I trashed my cup by her bag, no words needed. Her appeal? Stamped, rejected, out of jurisdiction. She weaponized drama next. Fake patrols, yard signs, property rights equals community rights, emails on environmental overreach. Neighbors tuned out. Her house blacked out again, not me. A squirrel chewed wires. Power company cut service for hazards. Her jury-rigged generator failed. She broom-whacked the box in flashlight glow. Saturday's urgent HOA meet at Susan's driveway. Helen arrived disheveled, Pop-Tart in hand, ranting my electrical tyranny, extremist infiltration, even toaster wiretapping. Susan interrupted. Helen, you're out as president. Frozen what? Voted last night. Unanimous. Mike's in. Mike saluted with his soda. Per your bylaws, to oust Paul, you misappropriated funds. Acted solo. No defenders. Even Betty stared at her feet. Helen dropped her clipboard, walked off. But I knew her illegal wiring lingered, tied to patio lights. Neighborly, I tipped Inspector Bob. He flagged violations. Disconnection mandated, $3,000 fine. She argued. He jabbed her totally legit wire plan, smiley face, diagram. She paid, but didn't fix. She fled. Car gone, windows dark, faded for sale sign under her maiden name. Neighborhood dubbed it the tyrant's exit. Movers hauled her stuff. Sign down, lights swaying, unplugged. Peace settled. New board refunded donations, fixed flickering streets, even sought my energy tips. I pondered it, porch sitting with biscuit, stars above, cicadas humming, Helen's defeated glare a sweet echo. Then my phone buzzed. Voicemail from Agent Harris, IRS. Follow up on your tip. Irregularities confirmed. Call back. You'd think Helen's bitter bolt would end it, but karma invited one more stir. Agent Harris was thrilled. My docs triggered a probe. Helen hadn't just skipped nonprofit status, she dumped all funds into her personal account for 3 years. Efficiency, she claimed, but it was embezzlement. HOA cash in, makeup and decor out. As ousted but recorded officer, they traced her new cash-bought home. Subpoenas revealed 47 phony reimbursements, sans receipts $8,900 siphoned from bake sales and raffles. I offered more evidence. He asked if I'd testify. Only with my goat and chair. He chuckled. I didn't. Neighborhood bloomed sans Helen. Susan's flowers revived. Mike's blue mailbox rebelled. Meetings became lemonade chats. Helen's last gasp, a smeared letter accusing me of psychological attrition, infrastructure intimidation, ruining her realtor rep, calling me a sociopath with death machines. Finale. You won, but you'll expose yourself. I'll wait. I filed it under Biscuit's bowl. He marked it fittingly. The end. An IRS sedan at Mike's. Badge flashed. He pointed my way. Agent Thompson clarified timelines, took my saved newsletters, Helen's fireworks brag key. Thorough, she said. Motivated, I replied. Weeks later, indicted on 5 counts: wire fraud, tax evasion, fund misappropriation, obstructing probes, backdated permits. Mugshot online. No pearls, no poise. Fallout viral, blogs, chats, parody vids with Biscuit as narrator in a deep voice. HOA predators of suburbia. Her house resold distressed, socials vanished, but tales lingered in yard talks. Agent Harris thanked Mimi tip linked 3 regional cases of shady HOA budgets. Reward offered. I declined, by better tip forms. What I gained? True peace and no fence snooping, no spiteful outages, just wind chimes and Biscuit grazing under solar home. Sometimes I wonder about Helen maybe pushing a condo HOA, clipboard band, plotting in glitter pens. Doesn't matter. I didn't win with noise or drama. I stayed unshakable, receipts in hand, while she self-destructed. She cut my power. I rewired her world. What do you think about stories like this where everyday injustices spark quiet battles that expose deeper wrongs? Share in the comments. Do you see this as justified revenge against a bully, or does it cross into unnecessary escalation? Weigh in on violence and unfairness in daily life. Take a stand and let us know your view.